Welcome to Back to the Father, a show about the journey of life focused on our final end, which is God Himself, our loving Father. And now, here's your host, Dave Palmer.
Well, hello, everybody, and thanks for joining us on this edition of Back to the Father on this Friday, October 10th, 2025. This is a show that is dedicated to digging kind of deep into the teachings of St. Thomas Aquinas, trying to make them as relatable as possible. Sometimes it's harder than other times with particular topics related to Aquinas. But if you like philosophy, if you like thinking deep and really exploring what it means to be a human person living in this world and kind of finding our way through it and back to the Father, well, this is the program for you. And you remember last week we talked about predestination, and that was a pretty deep and complicated topic. And I know we had a few of you that commented on that one. So anyways, welcome, and we're glad that you are here, whether you're watching live at 1 o'clock Central Time on Friday, or if maybe you're watching the recording some other time. At any rate, if you want to comment, we love, especially the live comments. I'll always, take notice of what you ask or what you say and make a comment about that. And if you're watching it on a recording basis and you want to get on our email list, all you got to do is email backtothefather@grnonline.com. We are kind of like, among the GRN shows, we're like the little train that could. I mean, we're just like the little show that's just on social media. But we've been doing this for a long time. And, a few little signs of life. Got an email, Sissel, today from a guy who was writing to me from the Back to the Father email, which is kind of cool. So he wrote, reached out to me. That's super fun. And it wasn't even related to the show. It was just a question about GRN, but he emailed on that. So he must have been, he's either on our email list or he's aware of, that aspect of the GRN. So let's see. So today we're going to talk about a very important topic, a very relatable and relevant topic to every single person, and that is the dignity of the human person. And what makes us unique? What makes us different from the other creatures? What does it mean to be made in the image and likeness of God? How are we different from angels? How are we similar to angels? How are we like our dog or our goldfish or our earthworms in the yard? And how are we different from them? And it's an important thing because I think the threats to humanity, the threats to the dignity of the human person are really, really out there. You have the obvious threats like abortion and, racism and, genocide and those horrific things that are all still going on, at pretty high volumes. But then I think also in a more subtle way is this whole kind of AI revolution and robots and, this whole, it almost seems like they're trying to scientifically develop human people artificially. And it just, there seems to be a lot of threats. And so it's all the more a reason that I think it's really important for us to understand what it means to be a human person. And one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this topic today is because you may be or may not be aware of the fact that a couple of months ago we launched something called GRN Academy. And GRN Academy is an outgrowth of the Guadalupe Radio Network. It was the inspiration of our Chief Operating Officer, Toya, who came up with this idea of having live interactive classes on various topics related to our faith that you can pay for, nominal fee. It's not too expensive, like $150 for a 7-week course, and learn live, interactive with teachers who know what they're talking about. So we started it, and we're more than halfway through our first term. And the class I'm going to teach in January of 2026 is called The Dignity of the Human Person, Made to the Image of God. So I'm going to give you a little preview of that today, and this will live on, on our social media sites. So if people watch this in the future, you might want to consider signing up. I don't know if you know this, Sissel, is that, oh, by the way, hello. I always do this.
Hello.
I get so excited to get started that okay, there's
I'm
Sissel.
not just a voice. I can be seen. I just don't, I'm controlling a lot of other things back here, and I'm very distracted. Sorry, this is so sidebar, but I have another monitor now in here, and I'm just like, whoa.
Yeah.
So so many things to look at in here.
Yeah, that monitor's really kind of freaking you out a little bit.
Yeah,
it
is because I have a very small window now left in the window.
Yeah, I know. I
to see
noticed
Dave.
That.
So
yeah,
it's very interesting.
You had to actually kind of move over for me to even see you.
Yeah,
but...
I did.
All right, so let me ask you, since you're the only person that I can see, although we've got a pretty good number of people that are on
Omar
right
says
now.
hi, by the way. Hello,
All
Omar.
Right. Omar, have we had Omar on before?
I don't know if I've seen Omar before, so
All right.
welcome.
So I'm going to put all you people out there in social media land on the spot, and I'm going to ask Sissel the same question. How would you answer this question? If you're on an elevator, you got 20 seconds to answer, and somebody asks you the oddest question, on your way down to the elevator. You do this. You get into these little brief conversations. You don't have much time in the elevator, and it's typically pleasantries. I hope you have a good day. How are you doing? Where do you work?
Nice shoes.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. Nobody ever says that to me because my shoes are pretty bland. I know they're just making stuff up.
I think that means you seem to up your shoe game.
how would you answer that question? Like, what is unique? What is the dignity of the human person? What makes us special? How would you answer that? You got 30 seconds.
Oh my gosh, no pressure. I would answer saying that I was made in the image and likeness of God, and that God created me not only like in His image and likeness, and we have a body, but we also have a soul that is eternal, and we also have our free will, which separates us from a lot of other living creatures and stuff like that. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, no,
is the dignity of the human person. Now they might have like 1,000 follow-up questions to that.
I know. And
then, oops, oh no, my floor is here.
Yeah, right. I gotta go.
Sorry.
Go. And so, okay, let me ask you this. And, just to kind of gauge, where you are, and everybody out there watching, you can think of these same questions. Sissel's just the one that's on the hot seat. Are there any other creatures made to the image and likeness of God?
Oh dear, I feel like I'm gonna mess this one up. I want to say that there are. I don't know. Okay, I get confused. No matter how many times we've talked about it, I still get confused by angels. And if they have, because they're not like there's some things that we share in common. There's some things we don't. And so I don't remember if that one is one of them.
All right. So that's kind of a non-answer.
It
but
is.
Okay, no. And I always have to preface this by saying this is, I'm going to be speaking according to St. Thomas Aquinas. Now, there may be people that disagree with this, that don't think that angels are made to the image and likeness of God, but Aquinas would say they definitely are, because they have intellect and they have will, but your pet goldfish and dog would not, because they don't have those things. And then, so I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but again, if you're watching, especially if you're watching live here on this Friday afternoon during the 1 o'clock hour, let us know, like Omar did, that you're out there, maybe where you are, because it's kind of cool that this show potentially has like 8 billion viewers. I mean, we go out to the entire world. Anybody that has a computer or a phone can watch this, and that's really an amazing thing. It's also a great responsibility as well. So let me just say that, as I was mentioning a moment ago, and Sissel, you go ahead and just jump in anytime you want, and also let us know if anybody comments, is GRN Academy this semester, fall 2025, we have 4 classes. Ray Lopez is teaching a class on Aristotle's Ethics on Saturday mornings at 8 o'clock. I am teaching Mondays at 7 p.m. Central Time on an introduction to the Summa Theologica, which really was just the first part of the Summa, which is about God. It's also probably the most complicated part. And that's, Thomas took a risk there because he starts off really deep. If you want somebody to read, 5 volumes of a book.
Maybe start easy.
Yeah, maybe start off easy. That's why whenever I teach, the first class, I keep it really simple because I don't want people to drop. Then I get into the heavy stuff.
Then they're stuck.
Yeah, but I always tell them, I say, the first part of the Summa is about God. And we are not going to understand God. He's so transcendent. He's so amazing. He's so above us that it's not easy, but it's important to understand these things. And so that's what we've been going over, the transcendence of God, the attributes, the proof of His existence, and things like that. We're going to go into the Holy Trinity, which certainly isn't a light topic, and then the angels. And then in January, the class that I'm going to teach, which is the very next thing in the Summa, is Aquinas' treatise on human nature. Okay, so what does it mean to be a human being? And if I were to tell you okay, I just bought a new car, and somebody says, well, what are the parts of the car? What makes it run? And you say, well, there's a lot of things. There's an engine and a carburetor and a transmission and wheels and, a body and, that kind of thing. Have you ever thought about this? Like what are the faculties of the human person? What do we have, going on? And I almost on like on a daily basis kind of go through this inventory and kind of like, just kind of like I don't know. So, for example, we have intellect, we have will, we have passions, we have appetites, we have senses, interior and exterior senses, and two different kinds of appetites. We have sensitive appetites, like drawn to things like cake or sleep or sexual desires, and then we have intellectual appetites, which is the will. So we're really a fascinating and complicated creature, and we are like the brute animals, and we are like angels. We're just right there in the middle, and we have this spiritual soul like no other creature has, and so it's fascinating, and that's also what makes us complicated and makes our lives kind of difficult, is because we do have a lot going on, and we're living in this world, but we're aspiring to the next, or aspiring to something spiritual. So if you're fascinated by the human person and you just want to learn more about who we are, our nature, and how it all kind of works together with all the different faculties of the human person, well, this class may be for you. And I think even today, you could register for this class.
Wow.
There's only going to, Lisa had it set up today. And so if you go to grnonline.com/academy and then click on registrations, I believe you can sign up. It'd be so cool if a few people from Back to the Father signed up for this class. Now you're saying, well, I didn't enroll in your class this semester on, the first part of, Prima Pars. Can I just jump into human nature? Absolutely. I mean, I think it would be advantageous to have had this information that we learned this, but it's okay. I'm going to treat it totally standalone. I'm sure, most of the 13 students I'm teaching right now probably will enroll in the new class. But go check it out. And if you're interested, $25 registration fee, and then $149 for the class, which is going to be 7 weeks in a row on Monday evenings at 7 o'clock Central Time. Let's see. So I mentioned Aristotle's Ethics with Ray Lopez, my class on the Summa. We had Angels and Demons with Adam Bly and Debbie Georgiani. That was a very popular class. Had like 40 people enrolled. And then the last class was Communication Skills for Catholic Apologetics by Steve Gleason, and that was a really cool class as well. So all of those teachers are going to be back in the spring, and we're going to add Julie Carrick. And Sissel, I don't know if you know about the class that Julie Carrick is going to teach.
She's talking about like music, how it relates to our faith. I don't remember exactly what it was called. And
she's going in a whole different direction.
Oh, is she? Okay, I did not know that.
Yeah, no, and there's no way you would have known unless you just.
I always stalk your meetings that you're in, Dave.
Yeah, I'm sure she'll be on Morning Joy talking about this at some point, since she has that regular Friday segment. But she is going to teach a class that I think is really going to resonate with people. And what it is called We Share Our Story. And it's talking about how do we, first of all, formulate our faith story and then share it.
Oh, that's really cool.
And do you remember how Nancy?
Yeah, I literally was just thinking
Ward?
about that. We have a lady here in Dallas who does the same thing, where she talks to people, because she's like, everyone has a faith story.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not like you're Saul and you fall off a horse and blinded and you're Paul now. That may not be your faith story, but it still has an impact on people. Yeah,
and exactly right. And so I think she was going to do the music class, and not as many people are interested in taking a class in liturgical music, but then she has this inspiration, and she's going to do this class. So I think this is going to be very popular. And so you can sign up for her class as well if you want to. It's called We Share Our Story, which is kind of a takeoff of her Saturday 9 o'clock Central Time show, which is called We Sing Our Faith. And so if you've ever, thought, especially if maybe you're a little bit older and you want to leave a legacy with your children and grandchildren, and, this has happened even with my own mom, who I sat down with a number of years ago, and I interviewed her because I wanted to know her story. And, when people are gone, they're gone. At least, from our perspective, of course, we'll see them again, God willing, in heaven. But you can't get their story after they're gone, and so it's good for us to kind of know what our story is, then also how to communicate it. So that's going to be Julie Carrick's class come January. And let's see, Ray Lopez is going to be teaching on, we told him we don't put the word metaphysics in the title, but it has to do with Aristotle again. You know what, actually, I have the title here. So let me tell you what the classes are.
I've also, just as an FYI, I've put the link to the Academy website in all of the chat boxes that we have going on. So you should be able just to copy and paste that and open it up in your browser if you want to explore some of these things too and register.
Man, that is a producer of a radio show.
I know.
I'll tell you right
Put
there.
some hard work into these fingers.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much. So, okay, so now listen, I love Dr. Ray Lopez's title. Tell me if this resonates with you. The Unmoved Mover, Aristotle's Glimpse of God.
Ooh,
Isn't that kind of intriguing? Yeah.
That is really good. I like that.
Yeah, The Unmoved Mover, Aristotle's Glimpse of God. So that's going to be Saturday mornings at 8 o'clock. And then, you're kind of learning all this, right along with everybody else. So Steve Gleason's class is called The Mass, Why, When, and Where, where he's going to go back into kind of the Old Testament, kind of prefiguration of the Catholic Mass. And so that's going to be his class. I already said we share our story. Julie says every Catholic has a story to tell, a personal testimony of God's love at work in their life. This 7-session course will guide you step by step in discovering, shaping, and confidently sharing your journey of faith. So I think that's really cool. And then, Debbie and Adam are going to be back with another class, Spiritual Warfare, Old and New Approaches to the Eternal Struggle. Ooh. Isn't that cool? So, and we have a brand new learning management system that we're buying. We got a couple of donors that are investing in this. And so this is going to be very exciting. And as I mentioned, my class is going to be called The Dignity of the Human Person Made to God's Image. So I am curious, those of you out there, if you're watching right now, does that interest you? Now, just because you say, yeah, that's interesting to me, it doesn't mean like, okay, we're signing you up. Give us $149. But I just imagine it's something we all share, the dignity of the human person. And so I'm hoping it resonates. And by the way, we're going to be on Teresa Tomio's show on Monday, Zach Allen and I, talking about these new classes. And that's why Toya wanted us to get the registration page up, because I am hoping and praying, and we all are, that some people register on this coming week. So if you want to get into any of these classes, do so quickly, because we will cap it at 30 students, except for Debbie and Adam's class will be at 60. All right, so what I want to do today is just kind of go week by week and tell you what the classes are going to be, the titles of each class, and then just go through a little bit of details about it. Obviously, we're not going to go into a lot of detail, but I want to just discuss this so you can see if this is the kind of thing that intrigues you. And I have a slide that Sissel's going to put up for each one of these. So week 1, introduction, the human person as composed of body and soul. And I think you probably know that we have body and soul, right? But do you know what that means? And most of the time when I teach the Summa, people are very surprised, especially teenagers, when I teach them to learn that we aren't the only creatures that has a soul. Did you know that dogs, according to St. Thomas Aquinas, dogs have souls, turtles have souls, trees have souls, rosebush has a soul, right? And you say, well, how do you know if something has a soul? Angels do not have souls. All right, that's also another big, misunderstanding that angels have souls. Well, basically, a soul is an animating principle of a creature that has a body. So that's a good definition of it. It animates the creature. God does not have a soul because God does not have a body. Jesus had a soul because, Jesus, I should say has a soul because Jesus has a body. So that's it. If it's alive and it has a body, well, it's going to have a soul, So a blade of grass is going to have a soul because it's alive and it has a body, right? So the human person is the only creature to have a rational soul, because the brute animals don't have rational souls, and the angels don't have souls at all. So the easiest thing to explain would be, what would we look like if our soul was stripped away from us? How would I change if my soul was taken away from me? Well, the definition of death is the separation of the body and the soul. So I would be a corpse. Which would pretty much bring an end to this program. And so, I mean, again, well, I don't even. Okay, I was thinking about the Charlie Kirk thing. I mean, most people saw that video. I mean, one moment he's a living creature with a soul and body united, and then boom, just like that, he's lying there. Okay, and again, I didn't see that whole video, and it was horrific. But that's the difference between a soul body composite and a corpse and a separated soul. And we'll talk more about the separated soul in just a moment. But so if you want to know, what does the soul add to us? Well, that's the difference. If you see a corpse, we've all been to, wakes or, where you see a corpse. And the other thing is, you ever notice that we're generally creeped out by corpses and ghosts? I mean, both of those are really creepy, right? Because they're unnatural. It's not natural to have a soul and a body, not united to each other. And so that's why it creeps. They both creep us out. They're like the things that we people do at like Halloween and all that, right? And so anyway, that's that. So that's gonna be week 1. Just a little preview of it. What does it mean to be a human person composed of a body and a soul? And then we'll move on to week 2, and it's the various powers of the human soul. And we have a picture here, I think, of a woman running, or a man and a woman running. I'm trying to remember
it's
which.
It's a man and a woman. Yes.
A man and a woman running. And so I do that because I put the running because Thomas does in the Summa have a question that has to do with the powers of the soul. And again, it's like I said a moment ago, it's anything that adds to a corpse, and the difference between me now and me dead as a corpse would be the power of the soul. So that's pretty much everything. Thinking, willing, talking, sensing, moving, eating, whatever you can do, laughing, communicating. So all of those things that I just mentioned would be powers of the soul. And so let's see. So we are, really amazing creatures. And so those are the powers of the soul. And we'll go over all those in class 2 of this class, the various powers of the human soul. And then week 3 is the desires of the human person. Okay, so be honest. What are you desiring right now? Okay, tell me one thing, Sissel, that you're desiring. Like
a nap.
Okay.
Not because of this program. I need to say really quickly. I'm just tired. But it's a Friday, It's for Friday. We're getting into the mid-afternoon, and I'm just like,
yeah,
a nap sounds good right about now. But that's me most days, to be fair.
Yeah. Well, I'm kind of. I'm going to take all the merit away from my fast right now by saying this, but I'm doing some fasting today, so I'm very much desiring food. And Sissel's desiring a nap, and it's Friday, so we're desiring the end of the work week. So we are constantly desiring things, aren't we? I mean, is there ever a moment in your life when you're not like wanting something? And so these are desires, and this is what Aquinas would call the appetitive part of the human person. Okay,
there's a lot of syllables. Appetitive.
Yeah, appetitive. The appetites, right? You have an appetite for eating or drinking or that kind of thing, right? So, but not all appetites are physical things. We may want a pizza, or to lie in our bed, or have a drink of water or whatever. But some appetites are things like I want to get married, or I want to graduate college, or I want to get a new job, or these kind of things. These are parts of our will. It's an intellectual appetite. It's something we desire intellectually, and any creature or being that has intellect also has will. Okay, and any creature or being that has intellect and will also can have charity, it can love. But if you don't have intellect and will, you can't do that stuff. So Aquinas would hold that dogs cannot love, dogs cannot will, because they don't have that aspect of their soul. So and then we have passions. Okay, so angels and God do not have passions, but we do. And Aquinas identifies 11 passions in the Summa. So you out there, can you think of what would be one of the passions? And this is probably something that would be good to commit to memory. Is there's two types of passions. There's what's called concupiscible passions, and they are love and hatred, desire, aversion, joy, and sorrow. So they're three couples, and they're opposites, right? So love and hatred. You either love something, you hate it. You the movement towards it or away from it would be desire and aversion. And then when you rest in it, you're either joyful or sorrowful. So it's like three stages of our relationship with things that we either love or hate, and those are the concupiscible passions. And then there's something called irascible passions, which, and I always struggle to kind of just to explain this, but they're different from concupiscible, but they're like, they're hope and despair, fear and daring, and anger. And anger is the one that doesn't have an opposite. There's nothing opposite of anger, okay? But those are the 11. So the 6 concupiscible and the 5 irascible, and those are the 11 passions of the human soul. So we'll go over that in week 3. And moving on to week 4, human understanding, knowledge of ourselves, the created world, and God. And this is something that I love, talking about knowledge. I find it so fascinating because we don't really think about this, no pun intended. We don't really think about our knowledge. I don't think about that. But we're constantly thinking about things. We're learning. We're, having contact with the world. We're, thinking about God, or thinking of ourselves, thinking about other people or things out in the world. And so, and now Aristotle has this really interesting quote. He says, the human soul is in a sense all things. So what did Aristotle mean by this? The human soul is in a sense all things. And this is a really important teaching. Do you want to take a stab at that?
No one else in the class wants to answer.
It's like being called on in class, like don't have eye contact with the teacher.
Exactly. All right, ask it again, and I will do my best. Okay,
the soul is in a sense all things. The human soul is all things. Now, this is it's kind of a deep thing, but it's an interesting teaching. So take a wild guess at what that means. The soul is all things, and then I'll explain it. If anybody wants to come in and rescue Sissel, be her lifeline. I love how we know you're out there. We know you're watching, but you're being really quiet, and we don't know how to run you off. That's okay. We don't know who you are, but you're out there watching, right? Yeah. Okay. So do you want me to just say it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the only thing when you say the soul is all things, I don't know. It's interesting because when you think about that kind of language, you think it sounds like a different religion, about how like God is all things, we are all, that kind of thing that we are. What is that? Is that pantheism? No, what is that?
Oh yeah, pantheism.
The pantheism.
That all things.
That's just what it makes you think of. So I'm having a hard time like connecting what he means by that.
All right, so I'll do a little thought experiment here. Okay, so when I say pizza. Did an image pop in your mind?
Yes.
Okay, so you have seen a pizza, you've tasted a pizza, you've smelt a pizza. So what Thomas would say is that pizza-ness is in you. It's a part of you, right?
Oh.
But when you were born, pizza-ness was not part of you because you had not yet experienced it. So when I say bird or raccoon or skunk or any of these things, all of these resonate with you because it's part of you. It's in you. And so what Aristotle means by the soul is in a sense all things is that when we learn something, it becomes a part of us, right? Which is a really cool teaching. So we go through our lives and we learn and that's why we have this natural desire to learn and to increase our knowledge and to study and go to school and become proficient in things. It's because it becomes a part of who we are. But he also says that we have the capacity for basically everything. I mean, we can't be infinite like God is infinite, and we can't know things like God knows things. But you think about it, if you lived 1,000 years, you could learn a lot of things. So we have this potential to know a lot. And it's kind of cool, so that's what he means. Whereas the irrational animals do not really have that ability to kind of store up these ideas of things, these forms, I guess you could say. And so that's kind of a cool thing. And then I will say one other thing that we'll go over in the class, and that has to do with something I've talked about in this show quite a few times, and that's the Copernican revolution in philosophy of Immanuel Kant. And this is really important because Plato had this system where he had the realm of forms, kind of the ideal of everything. Down here below, the shadows, where we have interaction with things like dogs and trees and bushes and flowers. But to Plato, those were just shadows of an ideal form. And then Augustine came along and said, well, yeah, okay, I'll take that. But the forms are really in the mind of God. God has all the forms of all things in the world, like dogness and catness and flowerness and that thing. And then he creates a world of all these things. And then we get to encounter them, abstract the form, we see them with our senses, our intellect. And so really it's when we encounter something, when we discover things out in the world, we're having an encounter with the living God. Okay, so that's the model that Plato and Aristotle and Augustine and the Christian tradition has kind of done. But what Kant did with the Copernican revolution in philosophy is he flipped that on its head and said, no, we don't discover things in the world, we construct them. Okay, so Kant brought it into us, and he said we have what he called a priori synthetic categories in our mind. Okay, I know that's kind of brainy, but so we're constructing it. Like there's this raw material out there, and with the categories inside us, we're constructing the phenomenon. We're constructing the experiences that we have in the world. So now all of a sudden, instead of discovering the world and having an encounter with the living God through the things in the world, we are constructing it ourselves. And so in a sense, it's almost, and I don't think Kant would have said this, but it's almost like we become God. Okay, so that was a really revolutionary change in the mindset philosophically of people. And a lot of people, whether they know it or not, are very Kantian, that they think that they're the ones that are kind of, and that's where we think that we can recreate ourselves, we can make ourselves to be a man if we're a woman a man, that kind of thing, where there's a certain creative aspect that kind of we put into ourselves rather than discovering the reality of things in the world. So anyways, that's all going to be part of week 4 of the class that I'm teaching, the dignity of the human person. And then in week 5, we're going to talk about something really interesting. And I'd love to get y'all's take on this, and that is what happens at death when the soul separates from the body. Right? Because when you think about it, like I said, the only reason we know what a pizza or a pig or a butterfly is because we have experienced it. We saw it, we touched it, we smelt it, in some cases we tasted it, and whatever, used our senses, informed our intellect, and now we know these things. But now, all of a sudden, with death, you've got the body and the soul separated. So how does this soul operate? Because it no longer can see things, can no longer smell things or anything like that. So how does it operate? Okay, anybody want to take a wild guess? Anybody by the name of Sissel? So how would you think? I mean, like what if because this is where it's kind of interesting, because Aquinas goes into so much in the Summa about that importance of having the body and the soul together,
right,
working together, the soul dependent upon the body because we use our senses. And now all of a sudden it's separated, and we're like, okay, what happens now? So do you have any guess, or how do you think this? How does it work?
That's a good question. Are we talking about like how does it work? As far as like how do we continue being, or how do we like move around?
No,
how
do you like now knowledge wise? How do you come to know something if you don't have a body?
Well, okay. Here is where my philosophy might be all mumbling together from years of doing
I like
this.
how you qualify all
I'm
your
just saying.
answers.
I'm just saying. Once we're in heaven, would we not have more knowledge then? Like that we're not having to learn it, but being with God in heaven, we would have knowledge of things. We wouldn't have to learn things. It would be kind of like, I know angels like have an infused knowledge and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and I'm not.
No. You're exactly right.
Okay.
You're on the right track exactly, because there's that place in Scripture. I don't know the exact chapter and verse where Jesus was being challenged about marriage in heaven. A woman dies and she has a husband. No, one of the husband dies, and then the second, and then they say, well, who's she going to be married to in heaven? And Jesus had a very interesting response, because he said, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, he says it's going to be different in heaven. We will be like the angels. And, neither marrying nor not marrying. But he didn't mean it just in marriage, but he meant, and the way the church has interpreted this is that we will become like the angels in heaven, and that as Sissel explained, the way that we receive information is going to change. And as she mentioned, the angels do have infused knowledge. They don't have the ability to experience things with their senses because they don't have bodies, they don't have senses, and so how are they going to know what has to be infused? And so then in heaven, our ability to know things will be very different. We won't learn things little by little. And also, a lot of times people say, well, what about all the stuff we learned here on earth? What about the memories we have? When our soul is separated from our bodies, that's still going to be in there. And Thomas comes down by saying, yeah, it's still going to be there, because, memories are kind of stored in the brain, so to speak. But and again, this is all speculation. I've never been to heaven, never experienced it. Some people have those, heavenly experiences. But at least that's where he comes down with it. And so the other cool thing is here, a lot of people would say, well, it must be much better to be a separated soul, because then you're like an angel. And why would you ever want your body back, right? Because we know that at the general judgment, we are going to have our body and our soul reunited again, but why would we want that, right? And how would you answer that? Why would we have our body back again? And Thomas says definitely even the souls, the separated souls in heaven, long for their bodies, because that's natural. That's who we are. We are a body and soul. And what's going to happen in heaven, according to St. Thomas Aquinas, is that we will continue to have infused knowledge even when we're reunited with our bodies. And then the glory of the soul is going to pour over and overflow into our body. And according to him, that's going to make our bodies literally glow. But we're gonna have different levels of glowing.
Wow.
And that's why, and I say this in all sincerity, I think that God puts clues in nature, and I think that's why we have fireflies, that literally, glow. And I think when, if we pay attention to nature and we pay attention to things, we'll say, well, why did God create a little tiny bug that literally glows? Because, well, there's a practical purpose. I know that's part of their mating and all that kind of stuff, and they can see each other and all that. But there's a whole lot of bugs that get around and mate without glowing. So why did God make a bug that glows? I think he's giving us a clue as to our heavenly experience, and not just in those bugs, but in a lot of different things. And also we're going to have different levels of glowing. It's called clarity. In heaven, it's called clarity. And Sissel may be like a 500 watt light bulb, and I might be a 50, but and then I'm gonna be like, dang, Sissel, you're just like totally showing me up here.
It's like when you're out, and bringing flashlights out, and you're outside in the dark, and then someone comes out with that massive flashlight. Yours just looks really pathetic. You're like, what is happening here?
Yeah, well, there's another example. It's gonna be just like that. So, all right, so that's gonna be the soul separated from the body, week 5, and then week 6 is the human person made to the image of God. And as we talked about at the beginning, we're not the only creatures made to the image and likeness of God. We are like the angels. The angels, as long as you have an intellect and a will, we are going to be made to his image and likeness. And the second person of the Blessed Trinity that took on human flesh, that's also the image of God, par excellence. So the second person of the Blessed Trinity is that the Son is the image of the Father, and so we kind of are like the Son in that regard. And then, last but not least, week 7 is going to be the state of man in original justice, and this has to do with Adam and Eve. This is really a very intriguing topic that Aquinas addresses in the Summa, and that is, what were Adam and Eve like before original sin, and what did they lose? So, I mean, if you knew what they were like before original sin, they had all knowledge, so they knew everything. Okay, I mean, they're like AI walking around. I mean, that's one of the things that I think is interesting about AI is that we will become like AI. The angels are like AI, where nowadays you just put in a search. The other day I was looking for the total population of the world. I type it in, and boom, there it is at my fingertips. And by the way, 8.34 billion people, in case you're wondering. And so the AI, I think, is also a prefiguration of what our minds will be like, where we won't have to type it in. It's just going to be there. We're going to know all things. And Adam and Eve had that. They lost it though, because once they sinned, the intellect was darkened, the will was darkened. They also had all the virtues. They would not have died, right? So they also, interestingly, had authority over the animals in the sense that the animals weren't all, kind of freaked out by him. I always, we have a lot of squirrels in our neighborhood, and I always notice that, like, if you see a squirrel or pretty much any animal other than maybe a dog or a cat, they're all like afraid of you, because there isn't harmony. There isn't harmony between us and in the created world. And so there would have been that harmony where Adam and Eve had total authority over them.
Cicadas would not try to attack me all the time.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because a lot of times I teach in the Summa. Well, Thomas teaches in the Summa that being and goodness are synonymous, and so I say everything that has being is good. We've talked about this in the show before. And the very first thing is the most hated creature in the world is the mosquito. That's actually true.
That's understandable. They take your blood. They give you diseases sometimes. I understand this. They're very annoying.
But maybe that's their purpose. It's like a burr, or a thorn on a rose. Why would it be there? Well, it's there, first of all, to protect the rose or to protect the field, right? But the mosquito, maybe by biting us, is just reminding us that there is a lack of harmony in the world. And there are animals that literally want to eat us. Some animals want to kill us and want to suck our blood. And the mosquitoes are kind of annoying and do that. And so maybe in kind of a weird, twisted way. But now, one other thing that's cool about mosquitoes, if you ever look at the anatomy of their body and the way they fly, and they're fascinating creatures. They really are. And so I don't know. I've been kind of turned around. I don't know. Mosquitoes, for some reason, I don't know if it's they don't bug me that much. They bug my wife a lot. She's constantly being attacked by mosquitoes.
They have very particular blood types, I think.
Yeah. My wife has the universal blood type.
Oh, so they're just like, this is great.
That's
jackpot right there.
Yeah,
and for whatever reason, cicadas really love messing with me every summer. I always have a few entertaining cicada encounters that I don't think other people have. So they just really love me.
Do you know what? So cicadas, what do they do to you? Because they don't bite you, do they?
No, what they do is, you've probably seen this before. This does happen. I know it's happened to a few people where they kind of just dive bomb out of trees sometimes. They just kind of fall out and then start flying. And I've gotten hit on the head several times by that. And then most recently, this last summer, I was pumping gas late one night, and a cicada came out of nowhere and hit me on the back and then fell. And I think it was dying, but it fell and landed basically in my back pocket where my phone was. And I had to rip it off of me. And I was like, are you kidding me?
Seriously.
So I get terrorized by cicadas.
That's never happened to me.
Exactly.
I would actually do you know what creature? It's a snake. A particular kind of snake loves to eat cicadas.
I think I need to get one of those pets.
Well, it's a copperhead.
Oh, never
Okay,
mind.
so
A copperhead cicada. Copperhead cicada.
Yeah, right. Copperheads, and it goes into really an explanation of how God ordered the world so beautifully, is that he created creatures that are going to eat other creatures. For example, what is it? I think it's the dragonfly that eats mosquitoes.
Yeah, they're really handy.
A lot of them.
I love a dragonfly.
Yeah, the dragonflies eat the mosquitoes. And of course, you have this whole kind of hierarchy and food chain, and everything just kind of is all balanced out. And so, all right. Well, I'll tell you what, it's 1:45, and I like to end this program early, but I would be so blessed if one of you out there, and, on social media, you can kind of see the count. You can see how many people are watching at a particular time. So we know you're out there, as I like to say during share-a-thons. And if anybody has any questions, any comments, I'd love to know what you're thinking. Did this make sense? Does a class on human nature, the dignity of the human person, does that appeal to you? Is anybody, let me see if anybody signed up for the class, because I think... wouldn't that be so funny
awesome.
if somebody had actually signed up? It does not look like that's the case, that anybody has signed up. But you know what? This is like literally the first day that people can sign up for the classes. Go to grnonline.com/academy and click on registrations, because I don't even think that landing page has the new classes on it yet. But if you go to registrations, then you can sign up for the classes, and they are going to start mid-January, those 5 classes that I mentioned before. And so, okay, this is your last chance to comment if you want to. I'm very grateful that you're watching this. And again, like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, if you are watching this on a recorded basis, and you would like to join our mailing list, I typically send out an email on Friday and let you know what the topic is going to be and provide the links and all that kind of stuff. And then you can also communicate with us through that email as well. We're very grateful if you want to do that. But Sissel, any comments, questions, anything else that you want to mention?
No, I think it's just great. It's very exciting to all the classes that are coming up, and hopefully this served as a good preview. And maybe you're not going to be the one to take the class, but maybe there's someone in your life that you would like to recommend, and just send them the link and have them look into it a little bit more. That'd be awesome.
And if you were to teach a GRN Academy class, what would it be? Have you ever thought about it? I mean, teaching a class?
I haven't. Like in the most vague sense of the term, possibly, yes, but I'm very big on, I don't think that's necessary. I would love to do it sometime in my life. I just don't think it's a calling for me right now. I don't think I have that skill set. But I would say if I was going to do anything just like off the top of the head right now, it would probably be on prayer.
Okay.
On just like exploring how the saints talked about prayer, how the catechism talks about prayer, and how to build up like the discipline of prayer.
Yeah, well, that's a very good topic. All right. Well, thank you, Sissel, for running the board. Thank you all for participating. And I think next week, we have 3 shows in a row.
That's a miracle, honestly.
Goodness gracious. Is this really? Let me just confirm that, because I don't want to leave anybody.
Let's not get everyone excited.
Get everybody all excited. We're going to have a 3rd week in a row, which doesn't happen very often. It often seems like Fridays are very challenging. But in fact, we'll probably have a 4th and a 5th in a row as well, and start to be a little bit more consistent with this show. All right, this has been Back to the Father here on the Guadalupe Radio Network. We're very grateful. And again, if you want to join the email list or contribute and just kind of dialogue back and forth, email backtothefather@grnonline.com. God bless you. Have a great rest of your Friday and a great weekend. See you next Friday.
Thanks for joining us for Back to the Father. And don't forget, the glory of God is the human person fully alive. If you have comments about the show, email Dave Palmer at grnonline.com.